Hi, you're watching the capable, crafty hands of the Crunchy Parent from CrunchyParent.com, your resource that highlights the everyday impact of attachment parenting ideals and choices on one family's life, my family. So, at CrunchyParent.com, we like to, as I said, highlight attachment parenting choices. And one thing that we like to do as an attachment family is enjoy handwork and craft projects, particularly those that can utilize natural materials. So today we're going to go with an age-old process of converting sheep fluffiness, aka wool, into felt. And today we're going to be felting over soap. Now, why would you want to felt over soap? Well, it comes in handy. You don't need a body poofy. You don't need a washcloth. You can just lather up that bar in the shower and go. And why not? So, we are going to be utilizing soap. We prefer to use natural-based products. You can use any size or shape, but you're going to find that, at least in the beginning, a square or rectangular shaped bar is going to be easiest for you to start felting with. You also may want to have a towel handy. This could get a little bit wet. And you're going to want to have access to hot water. I generally use a sink, but because all of my sinks face a wall and you wouldn't be able to see me, today we're going to use a bowl. You may also want to have a bowl of cold water if you're going to be doing this with a bowl, or, you know, switch that little dial on your sink and you can get your different temperatures going. Now, in addition to our soap, water, and towel, you're going to need to use wool batting for your felting process. Now, wool batting is sheep's wool that has been washed, carded and combed, and dyed. This particular batting I purchased at Peace Fleece. If you want to find out information about our resources, you can go to CrunchyParent.com and learn all about Peace Fleece and where to get their products. So what you want to start out by doing is taking thin layers of your colored wool and lay it over your soap. Now, it helps to use thin layers in the felting process. Well, I'm not really sure why. I've been told to use thin layers. I could make up a reason why. If I had to guess, I'd say because the water can saturate a little more easily and the fibers hold on instead of just having a big old glob of wool. You also, for that same reason of helping the fibers adhere to one another, want to alternate the direction that you put on your layers. So if you wrap horizontally, you then want to wrap over that vertically, and I think it just gives that wool something to grab onto. Now, when you're doing felting, sometimes you can have a little bit more control over the process. When you're felting soap, it's kind of an organic process. Try not to have too much control over it. It's sort of crafty freedom here. So don't try to make everything too exact because it's going to shift in the felting process and you'll just frustrate yourself. Let go to the crafty world and see what happens. So you've got your fleece all wrapped around. Your next step, you're going to take your water and just start to trickle it over your bar of soap. Now, I should add that oftentimes when doing wet felting, as I mentioned, felt happens through heat and agitation, but soap really helps to accelerate the process. Of course, here we don't need to add any soap because it's built right into our project. So I've more or less saturated my bar of soap, and I can now begin to very gently work the wool around. Sometimes I do this by tapping it or moving it just a little bit to try to start working up those soap bubbles. If you're too rough with the process or too eager in the beginning, you're going to find that your wool just slides right off that bar of soap and you end up with a very lathery bar of soap in your hands and a very big hairball in your other hand, which may be colorful and interesting, but definitely is not our objective here. So you can see now that I'm starting to work up a bit of a lather and that the wool is beginning to flatten down a bit and kind of, you know, conform to the shape of the soap. That's a good sign. That means that the wool fibers are starting to grab onto each other and they're beginning to felt. Now, when I use the term felt, I mean it just like it sounds, just like you would buy felt in the store. Eons ago, they would take the wool, and back then they actually used a process of needle felting where they would take barbed needles and poke and poke and poke and poke and poke to get those kind of hairy wool fibers to grab onto each other and make that flat sheet of felt that could then be used to make textiles, clothing, used, I guess, in craft projects, just like we use wool felt today. And you can also clearly use water as a process of wet felting. So that's why it's called felting, because you're more or less making felt. Or I guess that's why it's called felt, because it's done through felting. I don't really know which came first, chicken or egg. But either way, you can see now that we're working up quite a lather, and it may help to just rinse that bar, get rid of some of that extra soapy bubbles so that you can see your work. And now that the wool is really beginning to adhere, you can use a greater degree of pressure with the felting process. Kind of rub the soap in your hands just like you would a bar of soap that you were lathering up in the shower. Now, I mentioned earlier that some people use a cold bowl of water as well, or I should say a bowl full of cold water, or they might use cold water in the sink. The reason for that is that the temperature change will actually kind of shock your wool and make it felt up a little bit faster. But I think it's going pretty quickly with what we have going right here. So, in just a couple short minutes, we have more or less finished our little bar of felted soap. Now, you would just lay that on your towel. You can kind of pat it dry a bit and just leave it to dry. And by the next day, you should have a fully felted bar of soap. I've got one here to illustrate. This is a bar of, ooh, excuse me, I'm a little soapy myself. This is a bar of soap that I felted previously. And if you want to watch it in action, as you see, get it wet, scrub it up just a bit, and as I said, you're not going to need a washcloth in your shower, you're not going to need a bath poofy. You're getting ample suds just by using this fantastic wool-wrapped bar of soap, soap in a sweater, washcloth attached. So I've sold you on that idea. Now, to make it even easier and maybe a little bit more accessible project for young children, my daughter Emma was recently at a 4-year-old birthday party, and they did a modification of this project. And in that case, what they did is they took their bar of soap, and I did have a bar of soap around here. This is how crafting goes in my house. I turn around for a second, and all my stuff has vanished. Well, we're going to use our imaginations here. They took their bar of soap, they wrapped it in their wool, and then they just took a regular zip top plastic bag, tucked that bar in there, drizzled a little bit of the water in, closed it right up, and instructed the children to just gently squish around their bar of soap so that zip top bag keeps the process much cleaner. It kind of keeps that wool on so it's not going to shift all over the place. Children don't need to be as careful, but they too were able to quickly and easily do this little craft project. It was a great take-home party favorite at the end of the party, and then they have their own special bar of soap that they've made and that they can use when they wash their hands or take a bath. So there you go. Felted soap, quick and easy, and practical, useful, natural. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please stop by CrunchyParent.com, list them in the comments section, or you can email us directly at CrunchyParent@sbcglobal.net. We're always looking forward to hearing from you, and if you have any requests for other craft tutorials, hey, we're open. Don't be shy. Thanks so much. Happy crafting.